Hey, everybody. Not really sure what it is that we're doing today, other than I know that this is not the Brewery Underground podcast. It has been taken over by the Whiskey Underground podcast. Scott Touron, what the heck is going on?
Man, we wanted to change it up a little bit, didn't we? We talked about doing something with some bourbon and some whiskey somewhere along the way, and here we are. We've got a couple of our friends on, um, part of a little group that we're going to get into later. We won't mention them just yet. What the group is, but we've got Jonathan Hayes and Aaron Porter here with us today, and we just wanted to do something differently, didn't we? Mix it
We
up a little
did,
bit.
and we do want to tell everybody that it's not like a radio station in the middle of the afternoon is playing rock and roll, and then all of a sudden it starts to play country, and you're going, "What has happened?" No, no, no. This is just a every once in a while we may switch it up, but we also know because we're the same way. We drink craft beer, and we usually talk about craft beer on our podcast, but we also know that there's people out there that drink the spirits, drink the whiskey, drink the bourbon. So that's what we're doing today on this podcast. We're gonna talk all about it.
Absolutely, and every one of us on here do the craft beer and whiskey slash bourbon, so we're well versed in all of it.
Well, sometimes I forget, and we get into the show, then I'm like, wait a minute, we're all drinking something.
Yep.
And so, yes, boys, cheers. And I know that I am drinking Single Barrel Rye, Jack Daniels, one of my favorites. So that's what I got tonight.
Very nice. I started with the Eagle Rare, one of Aaron's favorites, I know, and I've got a bottle of that sitting next to me, and then the Weller Antique 107 for glass two or three or four, whatever it turns out to be. So, Jonathan, what have you got in your glass?
I've got a bit of Eagle Rare as well. You must have seen me pour it, Scott. So that's what I've
Nice.
got going.
Cheers. Cheers. AP, what about you?
I took it back a little bit. I'm drinking a 1971 Ezra Brooks. Came out of an old decanter, Missouri Mule decanter. So it was way back, and it's a nice little dusty pour.
What, is that a bottle you had?
It is. It is. So I got this one this year, and I got it off secondary, but got it off a Dusty Page, and I really like the older Ezra Brooks, the 1970s and 80s. A really deep, nice flavorful profile. So figured I'd start there. 80, 90 proof, can't beat it.
That's it's a good starting point. You know, it's a question. You guys, Jonathan, I know you've done this, and Aaron, you're doing it right now. When you start with bourbon or get a drink at the end of the night or the beginning of the day or whenever it is, do you like to start with a low proof first and kind of work your way up, or do you think about it? Does it even matter?
Yeah, I mean, I love hitting about that 90 proof. Sometimes I'll go 80, especially if I'm really wanting to sip on some, like Aaron said, just some of the older, really good distilleries. There's some good stuff out there, right? But I usually go in straight at 90. You know, I think Scott, you and I talked about one time. One of my go-tos is just throw back a Johnny Drum, something to,
Yeah.
something to
Yeah.
get my palate away from everything else that's taken in during the day.
Yeah. AP, is it the same kind of strategy for you?
Absolutely. Usually, I start with something that's I call it Old Faithful. Know that that's going to be good on the palate. It's going to really wrap me up, and that's usually Eagle Rare for me. So low proof. If I'm throwing it on a cube or something like that, I may go a little bit hotter, 100 proof. But that's if I want to hang out outside and enjoy it on some ice.
I want to kind of start with, and this sentence has rung in my head for many years, and it was one of my trips to Jack Daniels, kind of when I discovered that I like this stuff. And the sentence was, "All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon." And it's stuck with me because I had to kind of process that a little bit and kind of understand what that is. But doesn't that make sense? I mean, I know it does make sense, but if we elaborate on that a little bit, it's like, wow, so whiskey's kind of the hierarchy and bourbon's just kind of a subcategory. And I use bourbon because it's the one way, we drink most of that all the time. But what
Right.
do you guys think about that statement? Is it something you've heard and maybe kind of processed yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I think the uniqueness of bourbon itself, and obviously in the name, was to set it apart. And I think it's just due to the process and the procedure of how it's made and created. Whiskey is made all over the world, right? And it's made from a number of different grains, etc. If you're in Europe, it's a lot of single malts, etc. But here, I think what's unique is that you are distilling a primarily corn-based product, 51% corn, and you're putting it and aging it in new white oak barrels. So you're really bringing out all the flavors of the bourbon or whiskey, very naturally, right? Whereas most whiskeys in the world are truly made from secondary cask, right? So, an old bourbon cask or an old whiskey cask or an old wine cask, they're aged in those. So it's almost making like a Pilsner, right? You can't hide it. It's very basic. It's got few ingredients and it's very pure. Bourbon, I feel like, is the same way. It's the most purest form of whiskey, which is why it's earned the distinction.
We asked this question. I like to ask this question with craft beer, and I guess it kind of translates to whiskey and bourbon. Was there a bourbon or a whiskey that got you into the thing, into this thing to start with? And I know it's hard. I don't know that I've got one per se, but can you recall one that kind of like, oh, that's the launching pad. Now I get it.
Yeah, I'll go for me, it was Four Roses small batch. Probably one of the very first ones that I had. Just introduced me. I didn't really stick with Four Roses throughout that length of time. Just got me into bourbon. Then started hearing, all the talk about Buffalo Trace, and rightfully so. Made my way to starting to go through their lineup. But going back to that very first bottle, that was like, you know what? What is this? This is good. I'm liking this. Maybe needs a little bit more of my attention than some of the craft beer in terms of what I'm sipping on at the end of the night. And that was, Four Roses small batch.
I feel like I'm gonna chime in too.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm probably I don't want to say novice, but over the last few years, I've really started getting more into, whiskey and bourbon. For years I just didn't, and then last few years I'm like, especially getting into the rye whiskeys is which I like, and smooth the whiskeys. I've tried quite a bit of them and really like them. And I've actually asked this question, John. It's funny you said Buffalo Trace. I've asked the question when I've been out with a group of everybody. I know Calvin, who is also with you guys as well. Has anybody really found anything that you could say that's better than Buffalo Trace? Am I putting that too much on a pedestal? If you want to make fun of me, go ahead.
No. I won't make fun of you because I think that Buffalo Trace has earned its reputation for a reason. At its core, it has created the most, I would say, the most consistent product and the most renowned product in the whiskey community, right? Everyone's searching for it. And there's a reason why you can't find it on the shelf. That being said, it is the novice whiskey lovers, right, choice of whiskey. Once you start to dig into and dive into some of the other brands and all of the different flavors and profiles that are out there, you start to find what your niche is. Which sort of profile you're liking. If you like a high rye or high corn or weeded bourbon, whatever it is, you start to figure out that there are a lot more brands out there that do a great job at that. But you can always rely on Old Faithful when you need to. It's the entry level whiskey, if you will.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well for me as well. So, Scott.
Yeah, and the brand too. And Steve, maybe this would ask the actual brand, not the whole distillery itself, but the brand, the Buffalo Trace, the bourbon itself. Like the price point's really good for the quality of the bourbon too, and you can, at least around here, you can kind of halfway find it. So for the money, it's really good. I think my introductory was Jack Daniel's, the single barrel, when doing probably about a third tour out there. I was like, hey, they tell you you're supposed to pick up this vanilla and this oak and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, that shit burns. And then one day I was like, oh, there it is. Okay, I get it now. It took like that single barrel to get that, and I figured it out. And then it kind of like the craft beer market. I used that as a launching pad and discovered other things, and kind of went down this rabbit hole that we'll never get out of.
Is it fair to say that, and AP, you speak to this too, that it went backwards almost? So if you look across all of the brands here, and you're looking at everything aged 10 to 20 years, Buffalo Trace and Sazerac in general, they have more offerings between that 10 to 20 year time frame than almost any other. Heaven Hill maybe has one or two. Willet has a few, but and when you're looking at Buffalo Trace in general, I mean, you've got Pappy, Weller, Eagle Rare, Stag, Saz 18, Van Winkle, and those are all aged at 10 to 20 years. And then they even have, the Pappy 23. And so right off the bat, when these were sitting on shelves years ago, I mean, you had those were the sought after bottles. And when you couldn't find them, people started asking, well, what's the same recipe, but easier to find? And so it was almost people working backwards. And I think that to your point, Scott, that branding of Buffalo Trace just kind of trickled down from there.
Because then the Weller's kind of like you said, as you're going backwards, then the Weller became really popular, and then you couldn't get those, and they were a bottom shelf whiskey for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
As I found out more about the taste of whiskey, as far as like my palate and listening to you guys, and then I have some other friends that are just they're on the level that you guys are. I was like, whoa, okay. And so I love this story, and Scott's gonna know what I'm talking about. Probably 6-7 years ago, I was up visiting family in Cincinnati, and he had texted me, and he said, hey, when you get to where you usually go get like craft beer, see if you can find in their whiskey section Blanton's.
Well, I set them up for failure, didn't I?
I heard, yeah, that's a really funny story. I think you guys are gonna love this story. So
it was at the very beginning of my getting into this thing, and of course you got to chase Blanton's. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I heard of Blanton's, but I walk in the first place I went to, it's called Jungle Gyms. It's like this bigger international market. They have everything you could ever want to find. And I look up Blanton's on my phone, and of course I see that, okay, this is why it's such a specialty whiskey. Now I get it. So I'm looking around, I don't see it on the shelf, and I see the lady that's working there, and I walk up to her, and I said, hey, you guys carry Blanton's? And guys, she started laughing at me like maybe for about a minute, just hysterically laughing. And I'm like, what is this underground joke that I'm not getting here? And she looks at me and she goes, man, that's such a rare thing that we get in, that we do get it in. The people that know, and they're here to get it. I'm like, okay. So the next place I went to was the Party Source in Newport, Kentucky, where get all your great craft beer. And they have all kinds of whiskey and bourbons in there too. So I'm like, better plan. I'm going to be smarter about it. I'm not going to get laughed at. I'm going to go in. And I went up to the guy working there, and I'm like, hey, man, I understand that Blanton's is pretty hard to find. Do you guys have any right now? And he's like, he wasn't laughing at me. He just, I'm on that level. I'm on that level now. And he's like, no, man. He goes, it's a lottery system here. He goes, it's pretty rare, but we'll get it in. So I was just like, all right. So that's my I love that story. And I think other people probably have encountered the same thing over time.
Yeah, that was the quest for the Holy Grail at the time.
Yeah, I'd say that everyone's introduction to whiskey has involved some variation of that story. I mean, I've done it. We've all done it. We've walked into that random store and asked for that bottle that we thought was attainable, and had no clue that there was such an underground scene of these bourbon aficionados. And you walk in there like, there's no way.
Well, and part of my thing was he was going out of state, right? He was going to be in Kentucky and Ohio, and I thought, man, he'll get it up there easily.
Yeah, right, easily.
Well, and the other thing is knowing, how much you can spend on bourbon and whiskey. I mean, even though I looked it up online, the price, realizing that, okay, it's probably expensive. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of stores that sell very expensive brands of whiskeys and bourbons. So,
Yeah.
how do you know sometimes, right?
Yeah. You just got to go ask, and
Yeah,
you may
and
get lucky.
you do. We've heard stranger things, right? You walk in a liquor store and you just ask them, and the guy just pulls something out from behind the counter just because somebody asked too. So that's that's a possibility sometimes. But it's funny too. Back to Blanton's, and we all still love it, right? It's still a really high quality product. But I'm not chasing it anymore. I've got you get a couple of bottles right now. You're maybe chasing letters, or you always want to keep one in the back or something. Like you don't chase. If you come across one, maybe sure, maybe I'll pick it up. I need the tea. but once you've had it and once you've got a few, you're like, yeah, it's fine. Let me focus on something else.
Going back to, and we're not going to make this episode strictly about Buffalo Trace, but just to talk a little bit more about how well they marketed this thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's all in the marketing. It's a single barrel. It's got the horses, and you collect the horses. And right, they did the same thing with all of their other products, where it's slightly accessible. You can find it, but it's very hard to get. And so it makes you want it even more. But then you realize, as you sort of dig more and deeper into whiskey, that it's a great bottle of whiskey. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a drinkable bottle of whiskey, but there are so many more things that have so much more complexity and so many deeper, rich aromas and flavors that you can tap into that are actually on the shelf. You have to get there, but right in the beginning of your journey, you have that fear of FOMO. I don't have a bottle of blends on the shelf. I don't have a bottle of Weller on the shelf. I don't have a bottle of Russell's Reserve 10-year on the shelf. And you're like, I've just got to go put these things on the shelf, so when my friends come over, I at least look like I know what I'm talking about, or that I have a decent collection. Right. That's how we all got started.
So
Kind of your
speaking of
cornerstone.
speaking of the collection, here's my question: of the three of you, who has the biggest collection?
It's one of those two. I can tell you that.
It's hands down. It's hands down, Aaron. I have been surpassed. Aaron has caught a fire, and
I will not deny the fact that my collection is way too big, and but it's all open and it's all shared, which is the reason I do collect half of it, because most of the times when we're having our BB meetings, I'm opening the bottles that I've collected for us to try for the first time together, right? A lot of times I won't even open things until I can get the group together. So now it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if we're not counting the 100 bottles of Fireball that Aaron has, I might be within about 5 of his collection.
I have 0 bottles of Fireball, and I will never buy the bundles. I won't say never buy the bundles, but never the bundles with the Fireball in it.
He's got them in the back room somewhere hidden, Jonathan.
Exactly.
Hey, let me do something here as you're talking about Fireball that John will understand. I'm going to seg into something here, a segue into some different flavored whiskeys, because I've had Fireball a long time ago. I was with Scott and some other people when Fireball became Fireball, and I'll tell you, it's been a few years, and I won't go back to it probably ever again. It's not my thing.
You actually had some in your beer once. That's a different story, but
yeah. That is a different story for another time. But I'm curious, do you guys get into the other flavored whiskeys out there? I mean, Fireball, but what are some of the other ones? Do you get into that kind of stuff, or are you kind of like, nah, no?
That stuff is typically not that great. I mean, if you're drinking Fireball, it's because you're at a tailgate and everyone is forcing you to take shots, or right, you're on the golf course and it's that sort of deal. But the only flavored whiskeys you're going to find are finished whiskeys, probably in our collection. And so that's
maybe a Crown, because I mean, Crown's got some interesting flavors there, but of course we're going back to Canadian whiskey now, and it's really, kind of a blend of about 40 or 50 different whiskeys.
There's like Crown Royal Peach whiskey,
There's peach. Their newest is blackberry, and that's really hard to find apparently right now.
They've got apple.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've seen that. I mean, you see the Jack Daniel's Tennessee Apple out everywhere. I've never tried it. I don't know if you guys have or not.
We've tried it. It's fine, right? And I mean, those whiskeys are made for parties, and I would say for um, people who are trying to get actively drunk, I would say. People who want to taste something that has a lot of sweetness to it, doesn't have any bite. That's what that's for, and your younger crowd, or really, a lot of your older crowd as well. But it's for making drinks and cocktails.
Yeah, cocktails. Jim Beam has vanilla that I've had. That's again great in a cocktail if you're trying to get that extra.
I think I got one that'll make you guys. I
Oh,
think I got
man.
one that'll make you guys laugh. A couple of years ago, I was with some friends down in Tampa, Florida, and they had a bottle of Screwball peanut butter whiskey.
The peanut
Now,
butter.
now I'm a big peanut butter guy.
Yeah.
I drank it. I loved it. And about 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go get me a bottle. And I remember texting Scott, and I was like, get that Screwball peanut butter whiskey. I was like, okay, like how did that taste?
Like peanut butter whiskey.
I actually enjoyed it. It's not something that I would get very often. But and now,
Drinking an alcoholic Reese's cup.
yeah.
Like, I think they have a place, right? I think there's a thing. Cocktails
Yeah.
are really good in those kinds of things, and they just won't be part of my collection.
Yeah.
No, it won't
But
stop
now-
me from drinking it, but it
Right.
won't sit on my shelf.
We used to go out, and you kind of like you referred to earlier, like you go out somewhere and somebody's buying shots, right? And it's Fireball, and I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I'll take a shot, but can I pick what I get and not the fire?
The problem
I'll
is the
think-
shot that you pick's going to be $25 versus that $7 Fireball.
Oh,
And meanwhile,
man.
I'm over sipping on it, and they're pounding. them.
Yeah. Funny.
Hey, so and this goes to all three of you guys. How do you drink your whiskey? And I'm sure it varies. Aaron, you mentioned this kind of at the top about a cube and stuff, but how do you guys like to drink your whiskey? Neat, on the rocks?
Yep. For me, it's neat. Probably about 90% of the time.
Mhm.
There are some that I know that, once I've played around with, whether it's, a few drops of water, whether, it's putting a cube on it, after just trial and error, that I know that I can go right back to it and I go, okay, this is how I like it, right? This is, I know I've tested around with this. But about 90%, I'm going into it knowing that I'm going to have this neat at least for 2 or 3 pours just to get an idea of the proof, how it fits with, what's going on in my palate currently, and, just play with it from there.
Like, AP, you taught me once, you had gotten us a bunch of the 1792 full proof. And what's that? 120, 125 or something?
I think it's 120. Yeah.
Okay. And it was okay, try it, and then try it with an ice cube afterwards, and it just changed the whole profile. Like, you picked up all this banana and stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Right.
not even just to knock it down, but just to get the flavor profile to change.
The aromas. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You do learn how you like to drink it, but also what it will do to the whiskey, because sometimes it'll mute the flavors, or it will make it not nearly as tasty once you add a little bit of water to it.
Mhm.
But for me, it depends on the time of year. In the summer, I'm drinking it with a cube most of the time. But if I'm, in the house or enjoying it, it's usually neat. I prefer it neat, at least on the first pour. And it's just in its purest form. That's how you should try it.
Yep.
I love this particular conversation because I have a relevant story that just occurred for me just recently. So I had gone and I bought some Woodward Reserve Barrel Oaked.
Yeah.
And I tried it. I had it, on the rocks at first. And then, no, I'm sorry. I tried it neat first. And I got the aroma and everything. And I was like, man, this is really good. And then I tried it next on the rocks. And I went, you know what? It totally dilutes it all. And that's one of the things I have to say that if I become more accustomed in getting out of that, the entry level, getting into a little more, I'm going, I like finding this stuff out. It's good. It's good to find that stuff out, and it's good to know. So that was really something that just happened to me probably about 2 months ago that I had that experience. And so, yeah.
And then aren't some proofs specifically like say a 101 is perfect because if you like it at 94, you get a 101, you put an ice cube in it, it will, kind of melt and turn into kind of a 94. Aren't some of those proofs kind of meant to be that way on purpose?
Absolutely. They've done a lot of work in research around, what are the proper proofs that their whiskey comes out at, once they dilute it. Right. Weller 107, there's a reason it's 107 proof. Wild Turkey 101. I mean, there's a reason why that product has been on the shelf for, 50 plus years, if not longer. I don't know how long it's been out, but 101 is a proof point that it needs nothing. But even if you put it on an ice cube, it's still very good, mellow. You get a lot of the red fruit, etc., and it works nicely. They put years and years of research into this, so you trust the proof a lot of times. But in reality, when you get into barrel strength and full proof and all of that stuff, that's a much newer phenomenon, right? Barrel strength whiskey used to be limited release type stuff. You didn't get a lot of that. You got a lot of lower proof items, and quite frankly, the people who were making the whiskey preferred it at the lower proofs. So this sort of new phenomenon came because you got groups who were going out picking barrels, and they were, once they received the barrels at the lower proof, they were like, well, this is not exactly what I remember it as, because I picked a barrel, it had these flavors and aromas, etc. And once you gave it to me at whatever the proof is that you bottle it at, it no longer has that complexity that it had. And so distilleries recognized that and started barreling things at barrel strength, and et cetera. And that caught on. People clearly don't like to fill their esophagus for very long, because that stuff can burn the crap out of you.
And I think you just brought up like an entirely different sect of individuals right now that are, and you might hear them, that they're cask only strength people. Give me my bourbon at cask strength. Let me proof it down the way that I want to. But there's two sides of that, and I think Aaron alluded to it. There's an entire set of research these distilleries do to know how the flavors play at different proofs. And so there's a reason why they pick the proofs that they do. But then you still have the individuals that have bought onto this new trend of barrel picking and trying to get the higher proofs so that they themselves can play around with the flavors and some of those nuances that they might not get on a typical bottling. And so I think that's really great point, Aaron.
We talked about the bourbon or the whiskey that might have got you into it. Was there someone that you knew that influenced you? Or I'm looking at two of them right now.
But no, we're looking at one of them is what you mean. There's one person who started this for everybody.
So, all right. So let's start with you, Jonathan. Who was the person that led you down this path, and then we'll follow your trail here.
I want to say that it was an event. I don't know if it was a person. I feel like my personality kind of led me down this path. I knew I needed to get a bottle. I was going to an event for somebody, a close friend, and I wanted to get him something special. Bourbon was kind of starting to become, really a little bit of a thing. Had the Four Roses, and so I wanted to get something nice, and I just went into to a local shop and just started talking to the people, trying different samples, really going after it, and then I just dove in head first. Really started to try to connect myself with different groups, different people, going to different tastings, and that kind of led me down. So I don't know if there's one specific individual. I think it was, sort of layered between me trying bourbon for the first time, knowing I needed to probably get something a little nicer than that first bottle, and just wanting to learn more about what was going on.
When I first met you and go to your house, you had, and you still do, you had all sorts of like rare stuff and stuff put back in cabinets. And is a lot of that because maybe you got in kind of a little earlier than we did, you think too, or you just you found the right path? And
I was just told. I was told. Even my father-in-law was told by Steve, brother-in-law, as well. These bottles you got to sip on. These bottles you got to. Yeah. You're okay to drink a lot of, and who knew what was going to happen with the market in general. And so of course there's some that I can't get to. That I'm going to put back in. The back of a bottom cabinet somewhere, and let it become my own little dusty maybe one day.
Oh yeah, I'd go over there. I first started going. He'd pull out 6 different plants. They'd all be different. we got a red, we got a gold, we got a Japanese one, we got this one. I'm like, my God. AP, you go ahead because I know where this is going, but this is fun.
Oh yeah. Clearly, our path to whiskey was through Jonathan. I mean, prior to that, it was, if you found me, it was a bottle of Crown Royal and probably some ginger beer, and I was drinking, right, Crown and Gingers or Bourbon Mules, things like that. Keeping it very simple. But in reality, it was when it was for Calvin's birthday. His was it 35th birthday, and we went and did the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, if you remember that, and I think it was in 2018 or 2019. And that really opened my eyes to the world of whiskey. I I remember this story vividly, but we did the tour at Four Roses, if you remember this, Scott. and you and I were sitting there like, all of this stuff is horseshit. This is
Garbage.
terrible. It's garbage. like why are we drinking this? This makes no sense. And then and in the what we didn't realize, right, in the gift shop, there's bottles of the limited edition just sitting there that we could have bought, and we're like, I'm not buying this. I'm never gonna drink it because Four Roses is disgusting. And now I've got probably 30 bottles of Four Roses sitting on the shelf because I understand now that whatever all the different recipes have unique flavors, and I think they're better off individually wrapped than they are collective. Except for in the blending of the limited releases or special releases. I think some of those are fantastic, but just going doing the Bourbon Trail, hitting Buffalo Trace, hitting Wild Turkey, you start to get an appreciation that there's a lot more to this than we know. Maker's Mark, doing the bottle experience, dipping your own bottle. I mean, it's incredible, and it gets you immersed. They've done a great job at figuring out how to immerse you in the entire experience of making whiskey.
Yeah, it's great. Continue. So, don't you have another Four Roses story too? Where you were in a part of a blind tasting?
Yes, I was about to say, he sugarcoated his experience with Four Roses. He didn't want to talk about this.
Point.
Come on, tell that.
As part of that, before I started my collection of Four Roses single barrels, Jonathan was like, no, you don't hate Four Roses. I'm going to prove that you don't hate Four Roses. Now, he didn't tell me how he was going to do this, but we were having a bottle share at Calvin's house one night. And I think it was for one of our fantasy football drafts. And Jonathan hands me 3 glasses of whiskey. I had no idea what they were. I didn't even know he was pouring them. I taste 1, 2, and 3, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what this one is. I had no clue. I'd only been drinking whiskey for maybe, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, right? I was still a novice. I was like, this is definitely the Stag Junior. This is definitely the Stag Junior. It's got so much flavor and complexity. It's my favorite one. Well, it turns out that Four Roses was that one, and I loved it the most. And the Stag was a close second, but I said, oh no. And then they wouldn't let me live it down. So, and to this day, I'm still buying Four Roses. And as a matter of fact, that's my next pour is this OBSK.
There you go.
Oh, it's so good, man. And then when you get, and you're one of the, I've had some other bottles that I've shared at your house or whatever. And the store picks too of those Four Roses bottles are just out of this world, man.
You make me want to go out and buy one tomorrow. You got me sold, man.
Even just if you just went and got Four Roses single barrel off the shelf, and it's not a store pick, but it's different for different stores. Those and those are good, and they're like $50.
Yeah, they're great. And it's the right proof point for you to get into the single barrels. And I think it's always OBSV or no, that's not right. It's OBSK. Is that right? Jonathan, do you remember?
I thought it was OBSV.
I think it is. I think you're right. I think it's OBSV. But then when you have an OBSV at barrel strength, you're like, oh, all those flavors are even more pronounced than they were in the 100 proof bottle version. But you really start to appreciate as you get into the single barrels of Four Roses how unique all of the different yeast strains that they have in their product are. and how much difference there are in just the flavors, aroma, etc. Speaking of Four Roses, I'm going to do a barrel pick at Four Roses on the 20th. So I will make sure that you all get a bottle.
Yes, please. Is that for
nice.
MBS?
Thank
Or?
you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Plus going to that distillery is just a great experience. And last time we were there, didn't they have every recipe for sale?
Every recipe.
One of the few
Every
times.
single
Yeah.
recipe.
Mhm.
So that was pretty unique, and that's something they don't do or haven't done a lot in the past. They would usually be maybe one or two recipes if you were lucky. But starting in, I think it was November or December of last year, they're trying to keep at least 3 or 4 recipes on rotation
all
at
the
the time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Okay. What is I'm going to say the word cheap, but what's a cheap or an underappreciated bottle that you guys have that you like and are willing to say that I like it?
Yeah, I want to say Russell's Picks. I know that's not necessarily cheap, but I think that there is sort of a larger gap when you're looking at like $15, $20 bottles and 55, 60, which seems to be more common now that almost everybody's coming in with a $55, $60 bottle. And then you're jumping up into the 80s, 90s, hundreds easily. And not all of that's warranted, but I want to say underappreciated are Russells in general. And then, of course, any store pick, any single barrel Russells. I mean, that's just, really solid picks for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you took the words right out of my mouth on the Russells. The Russells 10 years, fantastic, and it's accessible. You can find it. For me, a whiskey I think people don't appreciate enough is Bullet. I think Bullet Bourbon is very good. They've done a great job at continuing to extend the brand. It lost a little bit of its flair because they weren't sourcing as much, but I think their standard shelf product is very good. It's a great entry level whiskey, and I'll enjoy it especially on ice in the summer.
Nice. I like and because it's $17.99 a bottle. Evan Williams.
The bottle and bond.
The bottle and bond.
It's fantastic.
It isn't it?
And the Evan Williams, I think it's what 18 something, 18 or whatever, 1872 or something. I can't remember the year, but it's also ridiculously good. You should try it. And then now that it's in our market, the benchmark lineup, fantastic.
Yeah.
So
that's another one of those things that Buffalo Trace makes that when you go backwards for.
Right.
Or you have to go back and forth because it's a Trace product. And I was with Steve once and I got the whole set of Benchmark at Party Source once, and for the whole thing was $125. It was 7 bottles, and they had it behind glass, which was funny.
Yeah.
It's like you can let someone steal all of this whiskey, and it's not going to hurt your bottom line at all.
The most expensive one in the lineup was $25. So. But
They're
I got them all.
of it all.
Yeah, I had to go to the front counter and can you unlock the cabinet? So I can get back.
Yeah. I tell people to try anything except for Willet Pot Still. If you drink Willet Pot Still, you're gonna have
the new recipe is better than the old one,
and it's still not good.
Fair enough.
If somebody asks you, hey, I want to start a collection where I don't have anything. Give me 3 to 5 bottles you'd recommend, and just price point, availability, just quality, something good. What are some bottles you'd recommend?
I know I kind of started with Gentleman Jack and went from there because I felt like Gentleman Jack was like, all right, I like this, and then kind of a gradual Maker's Mark. That's with 46 as well, and then I know in the beginning you guys weren't making fun of me, but Buffalo Trace, I would recommend that.
Buffalo Trace,
I would still recommend it. Yeah.
No, seriously, I think somebody that's even getting started, that I would say Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
So those 3 for me, if you're kind of getting started, I would go, and those are fairly affordable. I think most of them are in the $50, $40 range, something like that.
Not even. Buffalo Trace, I think it's a $25 bottle.
Yeah, depending on where you're going to go. Yep.
Yep.
So,
what about you guys?
I think you hit the nail on the head. One, you picked different types of whiskey. So
Yeah.
your Buffalo Trace being your standard, Buffalo or bourbon. Your I would second you on the wheated whiskey. Which one was it that you said?
Makers.
The Maker's Mark.
46, yeah.
Yeah, quintessential wheated whiskey. It's perfect, or wheated bourbon, I should say. It's a perfect choice for that. I would also add to that lineup, outside of the Gentleman's Jack, I would say you need to do a Elijah Craig toasted, so you can get that toasted profile. It's a little bit more expensive, but at least it's no longer an allocated whiskey anymore. It's probably $70 now, but it will give you an idea of how that profile works. I tell them to buy a Russell's 10-year and a barrel proof rye, or a Russell's rye, one of those, a Wild Turkey rye, and I'd say a Wild Turkey 101 too, whichever one of those you can find.
Yep.
Those would certainly be on the top of my list.
Yeah, all good ones. Jay, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, lead me some, guys.
Yeah.
I have to search here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, maybe
Jonathan's digging through his cabinet right now.
I'm a rye guy, so let me see here. Woodford, maybe if you get, maybe you try for like a double oaked, but they've got a really good straight rye, 90 proof. I like going in and trying to introduce individuals to rye pretty early before they get sold on just, I like bourbon. I don't like rye. You can have that dichotomy of individuals where they absolutely don't think they like rye, and I swear I can change their mind. But I think you got to pick the right one. So Pikesville is a great one. That Woodford Reserve straight rye is another really good one. Maybe even the Four Roses single barrel, trying to, start to increase your proof there. And then after that, I'd probably have to second between what Steve said and AP, going for some of the Wild Turkey Makers. Maybe you throw in an Old Forester. They've got a pretty good Prohibition series as well.
Yeah.
The
1920s.
1920s really is really nice. The 1910s good too. But yeah, no, I think we've named some really nice bottles, and then talked about definitely getting a rye in there, and I love Aaron's idea about the toasted as well.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, I'd comment, but you covered them all, so I don't know.
We should, Scott. We should talk about some of the like the distillery tours. I know that you guys have done. I know you and I did one along with some other friends for your birthday not long ago. We went to Uncle Nearest in Shelbyville.
Yeah, let's start there, because that place is fantastic.
It really was. What I love about the Shelbyville area is, and the day we went was like a bright sunny day, and just like, man, this whole area is just so beautiful. And the land that it's on, Uncle Nearest, the tour was great. Enjoyed that. We did the tastings as well, and we got to talk about the world's longest bar that they have out there. Describe the world's longest bar for us, Scott.
Oh boy. Okay. So it's not one long thing. It's not a straight line. I can tell you that. It's also not a square. It's like this curved shape. I think it's got a couple of horseshoes in it because of the Tennessee Walking Horse Farm it's on, and it's curved. I tell you what, it's hard to get a picture of the whole thing because it's so big and just kind of the angle of it. But it just goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. Better than I could have imagined. It's really great.
I posted pictures when we went there on social media, but as he just said, it's so big inside you would almost need like a drone or something to get the experience of it. And the funny thing is, and Scott knows where I'm going with this, when we were there, we were told that they had a concert there not long ago.
Inside the bar. Okay.
Inside the bar, there was a big concert. Actually, they've had a couple, but this one is for a charity event. But it was Eddie Vedder and Post Malone, and Scott's favorite new singer, Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll.
Yes,
all, he just wants to say Jelly Roll. He just likes to say it.
Listen, Jelly Roll is doing great things right now and is on a different level. I love it.
Can I also tell you the reason we're mentioning them is because we are going to tag them.
Yeah.
In this podcast.
Yeah, well, we mentioned Taylor Swift last time too.
No, That
We're
was
still
a
here.
that was a really fun that was a really fun day though, and you always learn a lot. And I know all of us have been to the nearby Jack Daniels distillery, and certainly want to get back to Jack Daniels here one of these days soon, because that's a great place too.
Yeah, if anyone's doing the Jack Daniel tour, man, do nearest at the same time because you almost have to kind of pass it anyway.
Yeah.
But to work it in, it's well worth it. I mean,
Well,
they
just learning
rival
the
each.
history
Yeah.
Exactly.
of
The
Uncle
time history
Nearest.
between them.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's fantastic just to learn how much that Nearest Green really influenced the Jack Daniels product.
Hmm.
You should try them both on the same day if you can.
Absolutely. And I love what Jack does too. They don't shy away from it. They've got their, when you go there, like they're talking about, they've got a whole wall and a whole area about Nearest too. So I think I love that love they've got for each other. And
Yeah.
it's just a fabulous place. You got to go. So talk about other distilleries. I know you guys have been to multiple. Do you guys have any favorites that you've been to? I mean, they're all unique, aren't they?
They are unique. What's your favorite, Jay?
Yeah, I think one that I don't know if it's my favorite now, but one that I will certainly miss was a 1792. Of course, you go there now, you can no longer do a tour. You can't even go on the grounds. But it was just really nice. Pretty much first distillery when you were pulling into Bardstown, coming from the south. You're right there, 1792. Free, don't have to pay anything. You can walk in. They show you, they show you the rick house. They take you all the way through their factories, and there's just so many tastings. I mean, it's really good. Very sad that I won't be able to go back and do it
I
again.
feel like Aaron's got a story.
Well, that place got it's got a special place in my heart, right? Because if you recall when we went for the tour on our first Buffalo Trace thing, our tour guide, we weren't sure that he could see anything. His eyes never opened. His eyes never opened. This guy had to have been, I don't know, in the 80s. Yeah. And he's giving us this tour, walking up like these rickety stairs and shit, and like his eyes never opened. He's looked at all of us, and we never saw his eye. I still to this day don't know what color his eyeballs are. So it was incredible, and it was the best tour that I think I've had.
I think maybe that's why they had to stop the tours. I think every tour I've been on at 1792, it's got to be somebody that was over 70 years old was giving the tour. Your story, the one I've got was it was probably 27 degrees maybe. We're doing this tour and we're all freezing. I promise she has shorts on and she stops right in front of the rick house. We're dying to get in. She stops 10 feet in front of the rick house and wants to go on a 15-minute soliloquy about 17. We are shivering. Can we just do this 10 feet inside?
Yeah, really, turn on the heat. Oh my gosh.
I'm going to need some of that clear liquid inside there to kind of warm me up.
Yeah. That's when we were all drinking. We were drinking the moonshine, essentially. She was doing it to us to like.
And that was pre-COVID.
And drinking it at the same time.
It was pre-COVID, so they would just, they pour it in a glass or whatever and just pass it around. You sip on it.
Absolutely.
I think for me, I know I mentioned Jack Daniels. The Jack Daniels one has a place in my heart because I've been there a few times. But I was there for work-related stuff years ago when I think it was their 150th anniversary celebration, and they had Third Eye Blind and the Wallflowers that came in for a big concert. And it was the only time in the history of the county, by the way, we're throwing out some trivia for people that don't realize this, the county is dry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only time in the history of the county that they allowed drinking at that party on the grounds, and I got to be there for it, and I always remember that because I'm like, whatever kind of trivia you want to look in your life, that's a big part of history,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's so interesting that they can sell their whiskey though in the gift shop, but it's you're really selling the bottle as a collector's item, right? Like now you're not buying the juice inside, you're buying a collector's item. There happens to be whiskey inside the freaking bottle, right?
You're buying the decanter. We're selling you decanters.
Yeah,
they just happen to be full. Yeah.
I asked him once because you get a tasting at the end of the tour too, and I go, well, how do you guys get away with that? He goes, it's educational purposes. Okay.
I would be willing to bet that most people, unless okay, I'll say most people that aren't that are just going there for like a random tour, this would be fun, probably have no idea that it's a dry county.
I would say no, that they don't. They
Yeah,
have
I would
no
agree.
clue.
Yeah, it's kind of their little claim to fame, but it's a great tour. I mean, they've added new stuff for the past couple of years, and they've got a really high end tasting too. I think the Angel Share or something to do something. It's still only like $35, so it's a great time. And you could hit 2 distilleries in one day if you hit Nearest and Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
Out there. So, hey, let me ask you guys. So this is a whiskey podcast. We kind of like bourbon and Tennessee whiskey most, but Jonathan, I know you like. I think we all do, but you like some scotches, maybe some Irish whiskeys and stuff. Where does that kind of fall into your collection and what you like to drink?
Yeah, I think it's sort of been maybe something a newer focus for me, something that I'm looking to get more into, and I'm just trying to right now digest everything that I need to know before I can start to get into it. Especially when we're talking about scotches, right? Like I've dabbled in Lagavulin, just a few of the offerings that they have. But really, I mean, it's an entire world on its own. The proofs are just so far different than bourbons, the way they age them, just all the different flavors. And so I'm starting on the Scotch.
Yeah.
Irish, I kind of did go through a little bit of a time period where I did Irish. Of course, Jameson, I love that. Love the Redbreast 12 cask strength.
Mhm.
Is something that I've got on the shelf right now, and that one is just phenomenal. Not just on St. Patrick's Day, every day.
Yeah.
It's great.
And by the way, which shelf is it in your house? Just so
Exactly. Just one of them.
I think I know which one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Anything that can hold a bottle of bourbon is a shelf around here. So, but yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at right now. Is I'm trying to get into Scotch a little bit more.
And that old pepper that you got when we did that tour, you got some kind of malted one too that would kind of reminded you of Scotch too, right?
It's like an American malt that's mixed with like Scotch. So it's peat. So there's an American malt with peat in it as well. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through that bottle, and there's certainly some things I like about it. But just continuing down that road.
Mm-hmm. AP, you got some stuff you like?
Yeah, I've dabbled a lot now into the Irish stuff. For me, if you are a guy or person, guy or girl, who enjoys the sweeter side of bourbon, Irish is where you should head to next. Because for me, it's that sugar cookie butterscotch, like much more sweeter notes and mellow. It doesn't have a lot of burn and very smooth drinking stuff. And that again, the red breast, the yellow, the spots, green spot, yellow spot, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Those sort of things are very good. If you like something that has more complexity, but you don't like the peat, I've really been into the Indian whiskeys, the Amroots of the world. Fantastic stuff. Very deep, rich flavors, and not peated at all. So, or some of them they do some peated fusion, etc., but they're not typically peated. And lately, I've gotten into a little bit of the Scotch. Bruichladdich, I think is how you pronounce it. They have a unpeated version of their Scotch, which is very, very good. If you want to start with something that doesn't have as much peat, I'd say start there. Lagavulin's very good. Glenfiddich, very good. Start with your staples and then expand out. Your Glenachis, etc., that may cost you a little bit more, but have a lot more complexity and flavor to them. But I've dove into that quite a bit here recently.
Steve, have you got any experiences with any Irish whiskeys or scotches?
Not off the top of my head, but I gotta tell you, I'm listening to Aaron, and I'm ready to run down to the liquor store right now.
Well,
you don't need to.
Just come to my house.
That's what I'm saying.
I will be there. Give me your address. I may be over there tonight. But
they've got more and better stuff than the liquor store. Don't worry, I'll take you over.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take you up on that then. That sounds
seriously.
Great.
You're more than welcome, as Scott will tell you. everything is open and everything is drinkable, even if it's not open. So just, if it's something you want to try, haven't had before,
Yeah.
come on over. We'll
Sounds good to
I'll
me.
open it up.
I'll say this about these guys and everybody else in our little group that we hang out with is everybody's so generous. Literally, you walk in, hey, open it. Hey, what's this? Open it. Find out. It's
Right.
literally, just get it, man. Nobody says, oh, I'm saving that for anything. Just get it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Love
the
it.
greatest thing.
There's no use in a bottle just sitting at the top that everybody could just look at a label and never taste the juice inside. I don't understand that.
Yeah. You guys wanted to talk, I know, a little bit about like the state of whiskey a bit. I think that's a good point. Is there's so many people who have gotten into the hobby who want to collect it and never drink it. Right. There's no reason, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, there are certain bottles that you want to hold and appreciate for a number of years and eventually it'll go away. Or there are the special occasion bottles, right? The things that are highly coveted that you're like, I want to save for my daughter's wedding or whatever. But most of it, you don't need 20 bottles of OWA sitting on your shelf, right? Keep 2 or 3 just so you know that you have a backup, because ultimately you're going to have a get together and someone's going to crush your bottle of OWA and you want to make sure you have one to drink later. It's a sad state of affairs that we've gotten to a place where people are so greedy or feel like they have to put back a case of one single bottle, and they do that, 50 different types of whiskey, and they never drink any of it. You see it on their shelf and the bottle's never been opened. It's like, well, what's the point? What are you doing?
I agree.
Yeah, it's meant to be shared, and drank, and I could say I've drank a lot of bottles and a lot of beer with you guys and whiskey with you guys, and it's always a great time, and that's kind of what it's for.
My own opinion on that is, if it's meant to be aged like anything else, then age it. But man, I'm gonna drink it eventually. Otherwise, why did I buy it in the first place?
Yeah,
correct.
That's it.
Makes no sense otherwise.
So you guys are part of a little group that some would call it a cult. I know that. So I don't know.
You're also part of.
What? Huh? What? I don't know. What is this Bourbon Bastards thing I keep hearing of?
Ooh. Oh, you're gonna make me go to the shelf, Jay, drinking some Blanc. That stuff is so good.
Yeah, he put the big guns.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bourbon Bastards.
Yeah, what is this Bourbon Bastards thing, man? It sounds like I don't know, like a religious group or something, or.
Jay, should we tell them who named the group the Bourbon Bastards? Because I'm
Who
pretty
did name
sure
it?
You did,
the host
Jay.
of this show.
No, it is no.
I believe it was Scott too. I think that it was unnamed before.
I know the shirt that I'm wearing.
Yeah,
came from Scott, and it has Bourbon Bastards on it. So
it's just our little group that kind of grows, and we haven't had a T-shirt in a couple of years. I'm gonna fix that soon, but
let's do.
I know. But it's just us knuckleheads hanging out and giving us a reason to drink.
It gives us a reason to get together and around a common theme, and we normally will have themes for our meetups, right? Whether it's weeded or rise or a certain distillery or whatever, or a bottle kill night, right? You've got something that's been sitting on the shelf and you're like, you know what, I need to get this off the shelf. It's been sitting here for far too long. It's great. It just gives you, and I think that's the beauty of the whiskey community. There's a lot of great parts, and it's building a group of friends who have a reason to come together, share a pour, and tell stories, and just have a good time around a fire. It really is what these libations were meant for, right? The guys who created whiskey in the first place, they meant it to be for something for sharing with friends and enjoying a pastime and creating memories. And that's exactly what the Bourbon Bastards do. So and we try and obviously go on trips every year and do all the fun stuff. And it's been great.
It's been great. Yeah, we're just what are we, 2018 or something? I don't know. We've been around a while.
Somewhere in that.
I will
There we
say
go.
that another really great part about having a close group of friends that you do have bottles like this with is there's almost a safety that plays into everybody sharing the right way. You can go to certain meetups, whether they're public or with other groups that you're maybe not a part of just yet, or other friends, and usually when somebody else, unless they're spoken for, and I think this just goes to like the dynamics of groups within the bourbon community. People will hide a lot of their more expensive bottles, or they'll start pulling them off the table unless you're part of that closer group. But once you're able to, have yourself spoken for, or or it's just the original group members, or you guys are getting together, there's an understanding that we all know how to drink bourbon. No one is out here trying to do 5 shots of, a Heaven Hill, 15-year Heaven Hill or something. We're not out here just and I think that adds to just the safety of being able to, because bourbon is, it's not cheap anymore. It is, and the average bottle's coming out and it's around $50 to $60. I mean, even for your 3-year aged whiskey that's coming out. And so I think that's a really great part of just having a group of friends as well, is that everybody's trying different things. Yes, we have some of the similar and same bottles, but for the most part, we do have a good mix of bottles, and there is that understanding within the group of, we know what we're doing when we get together.
Mm-hmm. The only problem we have is there's so many bottles, and you can't get to them all as far as sampling them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the themes help. Like everybody bring 1 bottle or 2 bottles of this type of of juice, or this is what we're going to do that night.
One day I'll listen to what the theme is and not bring 6 bottles of whiskey with me to a meetup. But it's like I've bought, by the time we have a meetup, because we do them probably once a quarter, we try and do them more often than that. I've bought 6 or 7 bottles, and I'm like, I want to open this with my friends, and so I'm like, I'm gonna bring them anyway.
You're excited. Yeah.
So it's fun.
And then you have to take inventory at the end of the night too, after you've been drinking all night. Like, shoot, okay, I came with 6. I've only got 5. Where's the other one?
Most of the time, I send you home with a bottle.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, don't do that. And I'm like, no, take it.
Drink it.
I woke up many a time and like, hey, I have somebody's bottle, and Aaron goes, no, that's yours. Okay. I want to do something kind of fun, if you guys don't care. Just it's trivia, but I got this little stupid bourbon trek game, and I pulled out some funny kind of random little trivia questions. Now, disclaimer: Jonathan and I went through every card one night, but the good news is he kept getting the answers wrong, even the second time we asked him. So
I'm gonna get the answers wrong too. I already know.
Yeah.
That's all right. All right, Steve, you're a part of this too. I just pulled out some fun. Okay, this first one is funny. Okay.
Can I Google it first? Can you give me a chance to Google?
Can you type that fast?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Siri, listen to Scott's question.
Yeah, listen.
Hey, yeah. Thank you. Hey Siri.
Yeah, listen closely. Okay. This one's funny because the answers are funny. Which ghost is known for having been run over by rolling whiskey barrels in Louisville? And here are the answers. Patsy the Plastered Ghost, Patrick Swayze. That one got me. Willie the Whiskey Row Ghost, or Louis the Lush Ghost?
I'm saying Patrick Swayze just because it's so dumb that's the answer I'm going to give. That's my answer. And I'm not changing
It's got to be Louis. It's got to be Louis.
It's Jay?
I think it's Patsy.
It's Willie the Whiskey Row Ghost.
I think we're all wrong.
I know.
We guessed the 3 wrong answers.
The reason I found it funny was Patrick Swayze because the movie.
Yeah,
Guys.
that's hilarious.
Okay, all right, good. Okay.
Oh, wow.
All right. This one, okay, this is easy, but it's you'll see why. What cocktail is made with bourbon, sugar, water, ice, and mint?
Mint julep.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that was so hard.
Yeah, I know. We just had the Kentucky Derby. Okay.
Come on, man.
Okay. All right. Okay. They get better. Those were the first ones. Okay. What brand gained a market advantage when it was endorsed by the Rat Pack in the 50s and 60s? I could give you the answers. You could just guess. Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, Old Forester, Bullet.
Definitely wasn't Bullet.
Let me read that again.
I'm going to say Old Forester.
Okay.
Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels. Jay.
I know that Sinatra liked Jack Daniels.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. It's got to be Jack.
What was the first? What was the first?
Jim Beam.
It's Jack.
I think
It's
so.
100%.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
yeah, they got a
yeah.
whiskey named after him. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. They said Rat Pack, but it was all Sinatra.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. All right. This is another easy one, at least for us, I think. All right. In John Wick Chapter 2, Keanu Reeves drinks which iconic brand at the Continental
Blanton's.
Hotel?
Blanton's.
He knew it before he even
got a horse on it.
I know. Okay, here's one. All right, we're gonna get a little more, a little scientific. Okay, true or false? Tennessee whiskeys can legally be called bourbon.
I'm saying
Yes.
false.
No, it's true.
Well, I'm saying false just because I'm saying false.
You're betting the other side.
Yeah.
Jay.
It's a trick question.
I don't like the way that this is worded.
That's why I'm saying false.
But you've heard it on tours.
Tennessee
Oh, well, that was a long
whiskeys
time ago for me. So, it's been about
legally
5 or 6 years.
be called bourbon.
Tennessee whiskey is technically bourbon. The distinction is the charcoal filtration. Or the what I can't remember the name of the process, but
Yeah, I'm gonna say true.
It is
But
true.
it is. Yeah, it's the added charcoal filtering.
Right. Although marketing strategies may say otherwise, Tennessee whiskeys comply with bourbon law.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was true. I just said false.
He was just betting the other way.
it's good. It's the way to play the game.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I only thought this was actually kind of fun. At 141.4 proof, this bourbon is illegal to bring on a plane. All right, I'll read them to you. Wild Turkey Rare Breed, Booker's, Chiller's Barrel Proof, or George T. Stagg.
It's a trick
Okay,
question.
what
right
year
there.
was this created?
This game?
Right. Because there was one George C. Stagg that was a hazmat. So I'm going to say George C. Stagg. However, it's probably the one we don't know.
What was Chillers? Is that what it
Chiller's Barrel Proof.
Was there a Booker's, did you said?
There's a Booker's and a Wild
I'm
Turkey
going to throw
Rare
out
Breed.
Booker's. I don't know.
Okay.
I think I'm
Booker's.
torn between Booker's and Stagg.
I'm
Yeah.
saying Booker's.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Stagg. I like what Aaron brought out. Like some of these releases are, I mean, some of them are hot.
Well, you're right. The TSA considers anything over 70% alcohol to be a hazardous material. And guess what you're going to do with it? You're going to drink it.
Right. You're right. I'm causing the hazard to
Wait,
myself.
so was it Chillers or
not
was it
to
Stagg?
Anybody else?
It's Stagg. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't Chillers. Okay, so we were Stagg.
It's,
It wasn't
I've
Chillers.
never even heard of Chillers before. So anyway, okay. Well, a couple. These are fun. I mean, Jay and I went through this whole damn card game one night because it was so much fun. We'll pick one. Okay, here's one. What historical distillery did Colonel E.H. Taylor Jr. found? Buffalo Trace, Old Copper Fire, Taylor Aged Spirits, or Four Roses? You guys know this.
No, I don't. I should know this. It's not Buffalo Trace, though. I don't believe.
I think it's Buffalo Trace.
I guess it has to be. But I thought that. Well, I'm just thinking about the old.
Think about the old
you think-
bottles. Mhm,
Yeah, the old Taylor,
mhm.
right?
Well, there is Old
So-
Taylor.
Have you been to Castle and Key? Distillery?
I've not been to Castle and Key.
Wait, read the choices back again.
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace, Old Fire
okay.
Copper,
Never mind. It's not.
Taylor Aged Spirits, Four Roses.
Four
Oh,
Roses.
you're
Oh wait,
Okay.
whoa.
The hint would be look at the abbreviation.
yeah. It's got to be OFC.
The abbreviate.
Huh?
But I thought
Yeah,
that was
OFC.
old-fashioned
OFC then.
copper.
OFC.
I thought that was
It is.
old-fashioned copper. Yeah.
It's OFC. Okay.
Old Fire Copper, yeah. Like on the building, it says Colonel H. Taylor OFC.
OFC.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's his original
Mhm.
distillery. Okay. We'll do one more. I could go all night, but we got to end at some point. Okay. Okay. Science and craft. After it comes out of the barrel, what can be legally added to a product sold as bourbon? Coloring, flavoring, water, nothing.
Water.
Steve?
Water.
Water. Just water.
That's it. It's the only thing you can add.
Vanilla.
Vanilla.
Now you're a liqueur.
Give me
Vanilla
all
water.
Give me all the vanilla.
The Finnish whiskeys, I don't think they have a bourbon distinction anymore, do they? But maybe they do, I guess.
I would have to go and look up how they're actually filed again.
But you can't do any additives, but I guess you can finish bourbon into other barrels, because the Elijah Craig Toasted, I would assume, is still considered bourbon.
I don't think you can add flavorings to like corn whiskey.
Yeah.
But you can add it to other whiskeys, obviously, and then
that'll be part 2 of this podcast. We'll look up some of these definitions of things.
Some of the rules of the regulatory. It's bourbon regulatory.
Well, you know what that means.
Let me ask one more question. I know you're gonna wrap up. Hang on.
No,
one more question, only because some people. It took me years to kind of figure this out, or I finally looked it up. There are 2 different spellings of whiskey, right? You've seen
it. Yeah.
Do you know why that is? And I'm sure you do.
I have no clue. That it's always been interesting to me, but
it's EY and Y, right? It's
right. Yeah. Just figured someone who just was a jerk decided to spell it differently than someone else.
I know why.
Go ahead, Steve.
So because Scott and I share the same
God
notes.
Damn it.
Got to get you. We're always ending just on a high note, because
I'm leaving that in, by the way.
More the Scottish and Canadian, and whiskey is more U.S. and Ireland.
Yes,
How about that?
The EY,
yep.
yes, is more.
All right.
The Y.
Yeah, buddy.
Is Scottish and Canadian.
That's interesting.
Right, yeah.
I always win.
Meanwhile, Maker still spells theirs with just the Y. That's their own preference.
Guys, I think we're gonna have a Whiskey Underground podcast again one of these days, because this has been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to check back and see what else I've tried since from that time to this time. And I think, Aaron, I'll probably be over at your house trying a lot.
Yeah. We should certainly, the next time we do this, we should set it up where you guys can record here.
Oh, Lord have mercy, man!
Yeah,
do it live.
We'll start early in the day.
We'll make sure that Scott is the one that's editing that episode. All right.
Yeah. It may need to be
based on how this one goes. I'm sure.
I was gonna say on-site recordings. How have those been lately?
There we go. We love it. We love it, guys. We appreciate it, and thanks for doing this for us. And this has been the Whiskey Underground podcast. The Brewery Underground podcast will return on our next episode. But for now, for Scott Touron, I'm Steve Sullivan.
Cheers.